The Volume 3 update added 12 new drift events and completely changed the drift handling. So I've got 5 drift builds for you in this video. Let's go! Alright, so the 12 new drift events are broken up into 3 playlists. You have 2 S tier playlists and 1 A plus playlist. So I'm going to go through the A plus cars first, and the first car I want to talk about is the 1976 Chevrolet Camaro SS. This beast has an optional 2-speed gearbox, so it allows you to put a ton of power into it before that PI rating even comes close to breaching S-Class, making it a great A+ option. I was able to stuff 1200 horsepower and 1300 torque into it, and I really didn't test any other engines to see if it could go higher while staying in that A+ tier. Anyways, it's what I like to call a slow speed drifter. Lots of control once you're in a drift, and it's mostly throttle and counter steering, which is basically what you want in a drift car anyways. It doesn't take too long to get used to either. I found it fairly user friendly without a ton of secrets, and that's why I decided to include it in this video. Next up is the Volvo 242DL. Out of all the cars I'm talking about in this video, this is the most forgiving. It responds so well to input and doesn't punish you for over-rotating by either performing a 180 and coming almost to a complete stop, or snapping back when you counter steer so hard that you nearly lose control or lose speed. It's just a pleasure to drive and very user-friendly. I swapped to the 450 horsepower 3.5 liter V6 because it offered the best bang for your buck in the torque department, and then managed to push it up to 640 horsepower and 707 foot-pounds of torque. It's a ridiculous amount for an A+ car, and it benefits you well in lower speed corners where you need the power to carry you through. Nonetheless, I highly recommend starting with this build for A+, and then getting the hang of the new drifting physics they introduced in Volume 3, and then you can swap to something a bit more hard to handle like some of the S tier builds. And speaking of S tier builds, let's get into the 3 that I've got for you on this video. The first one is the Nissan Silvia. This is the 2002 Nissan Silvia Spec R Aero. This is obviously a drift icon in real life, and in the game, it has huge potential with the right driver. It's one of the most twitchy cars to transition, but carries nice speed through corners when you get the angle right. I'm putting this one first in the S tier because it's one of the harder cars to drive on my list, but if you can master it, it will score super high for you. My best piece of advice is to play around with the steering sensitivity to find something that feels the best to you. And then when you're transitioning, try not to let off the gas until you need to transition quickly. The car tends to snap back and oversteer when you don't want it to. If you're looking for a challenge but with nice rewards, this S15 will be the right fit. Next up, I've got the 2014 SRT Viper. In the video, you're seeing the Speed Pass Viper. It's got unique customization and wrap, but you can actually just buy the SRT Viper from the store if you're trying to just get ready for the Unbound Volume 3 drop. This Viper is, like I said, the reward for achieving level 50 on the Speed Pass, so you've got some work to do if you want the custom one, but if you get it, I'm pretty sure you'll find it super easy to control. It's got so much torque and room for upgrades, which is exactly what I did to it. I managed to get 811 torque and 878 horsepower. There are other builds that'll probably boast more, but with the chassis and drivetrain I've chosen, it feels insanely good to slide. I have 2 tips regarding this build. Number 1, the car is a tad bit on the grippy side when it comes to entering a drift. So the best thing you can do is make sure you enter with a lot of speed by popping any burst knots that you have before the corner. Then use the handbrake to enter the drift, and then use a little bit of regular blue NOS to push you into the corner like you're seeing in the background gameplay. Once you are fully in a drift, you can just steer and throttle it through the corner. Again, speed is super important, but once you are firmly in that drift, you will find this car super easy to control. And last on my list, the 1992 Honda NSX-R. I believe I have saved the best for last here. At least, it's definitely my favorite for last. I can't stress how fun and easy this car is to drive. It feels almost like a drift setup from Need for Speed Heat. There are some differences, but by and large, the car goes where you want it to go. What it means is that it reacts to your inputs the way you would expect. If I could only recommend one car from this list, this build would be it. What's strange is that it's the most unconventional build when you look at the stats and the tuning. It doesn't have a ton of horsepower or a ton of torque relative to the other builds. It can't even get to 100% drift on the handling. It seems like on the surface it wouldn't be a very good drift car at all, and honestly I just tried it because it's such an iconic car. Once it was built, I was thinking I might have made a mistake, but I was so wrong. It's the highest scoring car for me in the S tier events. Here are a couple of tips about how to drive it. Number one, it turns in slow because of the 60% drift handling. However, this is not an issue at all. In places where you have enough room to turn in early, just do that. Just prepare for the corner and start your drift early. In places where you don't, just use the handbrake to initiate the drift, then slam on the gas to keep it going through the corner. The nice thing about this build is that it actually feels quite grippy, and that yields higher speeds, which means if you do handbrake into the corner and lose speed, you will gain it back no problem. You can also use the handbrake to transition if you need to in a hurry, but if you've got lots of space to transition normally, then I suggest doing that. Ultimately, all 5 of these builds are going to take some time for you to get used to. They each handle a little bit differently, and some of the techniques will be different for each build that you try, and of course each tier that you're trying to build a car in. So just keep trying things and you'll find a car that actually fits you very well. Hopefully I've picked out a few builds that are a bit different so that one of these actually fits your driving style. If you have any questions about this video or any of the builds, you can send me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, or Discord. I read every single one of them. I appreciate you watching the video. Have fun with Volume 3. Shout out to all the Heat 5 members of the channel. I'll catch you on the next one. Trigger out.